Can you characterize the world geopolitically that he is inheriting?
Well, there's no question it's a dangerous world. It's got a lot of flashpoints, probably more flashpoints since what we've seen since World War II. We've got Russia and Ukraine. We've got China threatening Taiwan. We've got the Middle East exploding. We've got the problem with dealing with Iran and its threats. We have North Korea and the fact that they've developed a nuclear stockpile and don't seem hesitant to try to use it. And we're dealing with terrorism. So there are an awful lot of hotspots in the world that I don't think the new president is going to be able to hide from. Obviously, we had some concern. I have some concern that in the last administration, he talked about isolationism. He talked about America first. And the reality is that in a world that's that dangerous, you cannot just put your head in the sand. You're going to have to deal with those challenges.
Well, so I guess the question becomes, will the world be safer or more dangerous under a Trump 2.0, Mr. Secretary? You have a unique view, and a lot of people think that he could have an impact on the situation in the Middle East, on the war in Ukraine, that Joe Biden could not get his arms around. What will these two conflicts look like a couple of months from now? Donald Trump says he can solve them on day one.
Well, you know, he did say that during the campaign that all of these conflicts that are out there, he could solve on day one. And, you know, we knew that was over the top. The reality is, I guess he could solve them if he just simply allows tyrants to have their way and allows people to have their way and doesn't try to in any way provide any world leadership to guide what happens there. I think, you know, obviously with regards to the Middle East, he's basically given Netanyahu a blank check. And he's hoping that somehow he can resolve these issues by the time he takes office. But anybody who's familiar with the Middle East knows that it's not going to go away that easily, that you're going to continue to have to deal with Hezbollah, elements of Hezbollah. You're going to have to deal with Hamas. You're going to have to deal with Iran. Those problems are not going to suddenly disappear. So I suspect the Middle East will still be around when he is sworn in as president. And I think the same thing is true for Ukraine. Ukraine is very important to all of us because Ukraine is fighting for their democracy and in some ways fighting for our democracy. And the issue then becomes, how can he resolve this issue? I'm sure he's anxious to see if he can cut some kind of deal with Putin. But ultimately, in order for that to happen, Ukraine is going to have to be able to establish an initiative, start pushing the Russians back so that they have some leverage with regards to any negotiations that take place. So Ukraine is going to have to be supported. NATO is going to have to continue to support them. And hopefully we can ultimately find some kind of resolution. But that's going to take a lot of time.
Well, sir, as we consider the future of that support, a lot of that also rides on the decision making of Congress. How could the size of the Republican Senate majority and the outcome of the majority in the House make a difference there?
Well, you know, having worked with Republicans on this issue, I think there are many Republicans that support Ukraine's battle because they understand that it's a message that we have to send not just to Putin, but to Xi as well when it comes to Taiwan. You can't, you cannot be tough on China and somehow not tough on Russia at the same time. And so I suspect that that Senate, Republicans in the Senate, Democrats in the Senate will continue to say that you can't simply pull the rug out from Zelensky in Ukraine. You're going to have to continue to try to help him, to provide some support to him, and at the same time, hope that Ukraine can establish some initiative so that you can ultimately negotiate some kind of resolution. And that's where hopefully Trump's relationship with Putin can perhaps be helpful in trying to find some resolution.
Mr. Secretary, we watched you deliver a speech at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago less than an hour before Kamala Harris accepted her party's nomination. You've been a vocal supporter. You've also been in politics a long time. I wonder how you're rationalizing this loss and how long you think the Democratic Party will be in the political wilderness.
Well, having been through a number of elections in my over 50 years of public life, this isn't my first rodeo. So I understand how things can change and how one party can gain momentum. And they certainly did in the election this year. And it's a wake-up call. It's clearly a wake-up call for Democrats that they have to be willing to reach out and reconnect to working people in this country. They've got to reconnect with business. They've got to reconnect with minorities. They're going to have to reconnect with a number of constituencies out there that felt like they were being ignored. It's going to be important, especially rural America, which went almost totally for Trump. All of these areas, we have to be able, as Democrats, to be able to speak to those that are feeling deeply that what's happening in Washington is not working for them.
Understood.
That's reality. And that's something, frankly, that Democrats should have spoken to in this last election.